It's Spoilerin time. I'm Tom Merritt. Brian Brushwood is here. Justin Robert Young is still around. We are going to spoil The Shield, episode 3, season 4, episode 2 of Netflix's Marco Polo, as well as a look at the BoJack Horseman Christmas special. But Brian wants to start us off with a little bit of spoilery-related commentary about the final Legend of Korra.
Yeah, so if you guys, I got a number of people, because you've heard me praise both Avatar: The Last Airbender and Korra. They're like, should I watch one then the other? I will say, if you're on the fence, definitively watch Avatar: The Last Airbender first, because it's sort of like you got to master the basics before you can appreciate the clever mashups of ideas that happen in Korra. I believe this is the series end for Korra. Which leaves me feeling a little bit weird about the whole series. Their seasons were very, very good. They also just veered wildly from one thing to another. Avatar: The Last Airbender has 3 books. It is a beginning, middle, and end story that ends with one epic thing that everything builds to and does so very good. Korra feels much more like a comic book where, there's a 10-episode arc that does one thing, and then that just totally gets dropped. And now, hey, there's something shiny over here and becomes all that stuff. It's not bad. It just feels a little bit more procedural, which is fine. Although you do see character growth in Korra, including a mildly eyebrow-raising end in which it's amazing how much can happen in just like 3 seconds at the end. Everything happens over the course of Korra. There's a bit of a love triangle. This girl Asami is dating Mako, and then Korra dates Mako, and then they break up, and it's back and forth. And then the last 3 seconds of the entire series is let's go on a vacation, and then they walk into this portal to the spirit world and embrace each other, in which it's heavily implied, pretty unambiguously, that they are a lesbian couple or bisexual couple or whatever. And it's fascinating because I was like, well, that's a bold move. I don't even know if that's bold anymore in this climate, but I didn't expect it. I think it was handled as well as you could without inciting controversy for the sake of inciting controversy. It was sort of like, finding out that Dumbledore was gay, where it's like, hey, Dumbledore's gay. And you're like, hey, great, what's for lunch? And then I thought it was handled well, and about all you would be able to get from that. That's all I got to say about it.
All right. I'll watch it one of these days, I swear.
Yes. And Gatewag, you're right. They did seed it throughout the series. It was kind of a cool moment because when that moment happened, you suddenly flash back to so many moments where it was obvious the whole time. Like there's a moment where Korra's writing to Asami and specifically says, hey, don't tell the Bolin or Mako that I write you. I just don't, or that I write you, but I'm not writing them. I just feel like I could talk to you about this kind of stuff. Like all these little moments that didn't feel weird at the time, but suddenly they're like, oh, that's what they were setting up all this time.
Gotcha. All right, let us move into the best Christmas ever for a horse. The BoJack Horseman Christmas special, as we mentioned in the main show, dropped on us out of nowhere. I saw it because Brian was freaking out that BoJack Horseman tweeted him, which led me back to discovering that actually existed. I had to dig a little. They didn't recommend it to me.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, I think it's one of those things. I think they handled it exactly right because it was a delightful surprise to see it. But if I'm Netflix, it's not really such a great episode that I'm going to hammer down like, get ready. BoJack Horseman Christmas special coming up. I think that was smart for them to just sort of throw it out there. Because the biggest problem, and I'd be interested to hear Justin's take on this, the biggest problem is more than 2/3 of it is an actual horsing around episode, just with a bit of rapper. And, we know that horsing around happened in the background and that it was very cliche and trite. So it was a bit weird spending 20 full minutes watching a very cliche and trite 90s bad sitcom.
I mean, it's if you are into that element of the series, if you have fond memories of the step-by-steps, family matters of the world, you are a TGIF watcher as a kid or an adult, and you enjoy the breakdown of that genre of sitcom of that era, then there's a lot of little funny Easter eggs to it, but it feels like a script that was found very funny in the writer's room. and is loaded with a lot of kind of writer humor. Like there's a running gag on how lazy the writing is in the show.
Right.
You know? And it's like, it's not really, nobody hits you on the head with it. It's just kind of there. And I found it funny. I can't imagine that a lot of people, where there were so many other overt themes in the show proper, would necessarily immediately get that. So I found it very, very funny. But there was one element that I don't even know is true, but if it is, delights me to no end. And I will get to it after Tom says what he thought.
I was amused. And I think Brian hit the nail on the head. If they had made this into a big, like, hey, the BoJack Horseman Christmas special is coming thing, I might have been disappointed. But instead, it was kind of a happy surprise that I just, like, spur of the moment saw existed, pulled up. You know, Eileen was busy doing something on her laptop. I was, you know, just kind of chilling. I think I was doing some other stuff too while I watched, and it was perfect for that. It was amusing. I love the meta show aspect of it and that throwback to 80s culture, and I would hate it if they did that all the time. But again, in the context of surprise Christmas special, it was a nice little parody piece, and I thought they peppered in the amount of self-referential like cutbacks to the present just about right, where they basically mimic what they thought you were going to think about something that was weird and have them react to it. It wasn't overdone that way. On the other hand, it only made me smile. It didn't make me laugh out loud.
Yeah, I got a couple of chuckles, the strongest of which was so fast that you almost subliminally needed to look back and say, like, wait, is that what, did that say what it was? In the title sequence for Horsing Around, as they show each of the kids, the middle child, the boy, his name is Bradley Hitler-Smith.
Oh, yeah.
Who, by the way, apparently somebody put up an IMDb page for it. There is an IMDb page for Bradley Hitler-Smith.
There were lots of little touches like that. I think they had some brand name stuff, you know, placed around that was funny, and I can't remember what the names of it were, but they were like...
So, I'm watching it, and then at the end, I see in the voice talent Fred Savage's name.
Oh, yeah, and Kristen Shaw.
And he's a producer, Fred Savage is.
So Fred Savage is a producer, right? And I'm looking for who he played, because I initially thought he played the middle brother, but he didn't. It's another actor. And then I thought maybe he played the boss. And he did not play the boss. Stanley Tucci plays the boss. So that leaves only two characters, and it would delight me if he played both. I think it's very likely that he played Goober, the odd next door neighbor, although I can't find anywhere crediting him with that, although I can't find anybody else credited as it either. However, there is a running gag that I found almost awkward during the episode, wherein a member of the supposed studio audience watching the live taping, quote unquote, of Horsing Around, this fake sitcom, keeps yelling commentary like an obnoxious idiot Greek chorus to things that are happening. Like, oh, he's doing the thing he said he wouldn't. And like, I'm so glad that little girl said her catchphrase. And then there's a kicker at the end where BoJack has this realization, and the Jewish business rival is now blamed for working on Christmas, as opposed to BoJack, who's taking time to spend time with his family, and the audience member screams, "Fire that Jew!" But it would be amazing if that was just the avenging voice of one-time child actor Fred Savage yelling at the genre for which has propelled him to fame and he has spent so much of his life dealing with.
Unfortunately,
I don't know if it's true.
I'm almost certain it's not, because in the closed captioning, you know, I always leave the closed captioning on because occasionally you get little extra insights. That is objectively meant to be Todd, who was there at the taping, because, you know, Todd's such a super fan. That's why he wants to keep rewatching all this. You know, Aaron Paul's character, it says every time in the closed captioning, it says Todd says that from the audience.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well, and I was confused early on. I thought it was Todd speaking in the room
next to
where
him.
they were watching it. And then it became clear later that that wasn't the case. That was actually in the audience. So I think that was meant to fuzz those lines a little too.
Yeah.
Okay. Then he had to be Goober. but I still like that idea, and I don't care what you say, Brian. Your closed caption's lying to you, and I'm gonna believe this.
Very good. But all in all, right? It was amusing.
Oh no, I'll tell you what, man. It's all about packaging and those expectations. Yeah. Like by coloring this experience with the joy of more BoJack Horseman when you least expected it. I think they took what might have been a base hit and made it a clear win to anybody who enjoyed this series as much as we did.
Now, we took a little flack for our opinions on Marco Polo Episode 1, perhaps implying that the entire series was going to be as bad as that Episode 1. So Brian and I, independently of each other, both watched Episode 2. Brian, would you like me to go first, or would you like to go first?
No, you go first.
All right. I found it to be more coherent than Episode 1, which was kind of all over the place. I found that I no longer minded that we really hadn't built up a lot of reasons for wanting to like Marco Polo. We were starting to get some trickled out. He actually leaves the city. It's a little bit of a rushed hack when he goes north. Why he is able to observe the things that undermine the guy later on. But overall, I started to see where this could go to become a better series. It didn't get me there yet, but it made me hope that everybody says, oh, Episode 3, it really takes off, that might be true, and it's probably worth watching Episode 3.
Yeah. It's tough. It's tough because, I mean, it is gorgeously shot to an extent. In
a way, this one isn't as gorgeous as the first one, although it's still very well shot.
I'll tell you what was gorgeous is the naked combat scene with the consort chick. Slow motion kung fu.
Where she strips down and you think, it's the classic, like, oh, she has no protection. Oh, wait, she kills everybody.
Yeah. And also I did think it was a cool kind of epic battle scene with the Khan and his brother at the end.
That was good, actually. You're right. And it was set up enough that I cared. It probably could have been set up better, but I got it. Like, okay, these are two brothers. And it was the key was the scene where they go and talk to each other in the tent beforehand and reminisce about, being brothers and what their parents did, their parents' hopes and dreams for them. That humanized them enough that I cared when they got out on the battlefield.
I am feeling a sincere, uncanny valley of quality. Everybody looks good to a point. The vistas are good. The CGI is good to a point. I caught a full-on camera. I saw a camera in the upper left-hand corner. It's for about.
I missed that. I didn't see it.
It's in the it's in that scene in the north where Marco Polo's talking. If you look in the upper left-hand corner, you'll see just for a slight second somebody on the second camera is just getting adjusted, and it just kind of goes in and out of frame for a split second. I mean, look, you don't catch those on Game of Thrones. Also, I can name characters from Game of Thrones because they make sure to start with. Like the very first episode of Game of Thrones was they set the table for these, and it's not fair to compare it to Game of Thrones. I understand, but but it is clearly trying to hit that same niche, and you need to learn to do things as well as they do on Game of Thrones. 2 episodes in, I still feel like, it's time for this set piece that, you don't care about it now, but, eventually you'll be glad you saw this because eventually you'll know who this character is and understand why they're doing it. That's too leisurely a pace for me. I'll continue to watch it, and if it really does get good in the 3rd episode, I'll probably plow forward. But for right now, I am now 2 hours of invested in this, and thinking of it as a television show, I still know two character names. I know Marco Polo, and I know not Genghis, Kublai Khan. Yeah. Everyone else is just noise with motivations that I don't understand, that I just assume have some meaning behind it.
Right. If the series were called Asian Swords, how many character names would you know?
Man, too many options. None of which would be a good idea. I still same thing.
I'm just saying, yeah. I mean, like it's named the show's called Marco Polo, so I feel like that almost counts for half credit.
Right. Helpfully from the chat, Ken from Chicago says the blind martial arts dude. Bet that guy has a name. Wish I knew it. It's like not there.
Yeah, I feel like too this one was less of a melange of different genres. The first episode really felt like they weren't sure what kind of show they were making yet. This one narrowed down to it's a mix of historical adventure with a little bit of a kung fu movie thrown in, here and there. Right?
Yeah.
That's the scene you're talking about with the sister stripping down and then kicking ass. We're going to get those kinds of scenes. I get it now. It's like, all right, you're peppering those in because people love that kind of martial arts scene. And then the rest of the time, it's going to be a historical epic. So I'm starting to collapse into a framework that I can get prepared for. I do think it's really clever, now that I understand what's going on, that instead of just being Marco Polo and Kublai Khan's court, that the real story that they're using is the war between the old dynasty that is still, attempting to regain control of their country from the Mongols. And then at the same time, the Mongol, the terror of Kublai Khan trying to get legitimacy by emulating the previous Chinese dynasties while not losing sympathy with his Mongolian base. That all starts to make sense for me in this episode too.
Well, here's the only other thing that I wish had there, and the good news is it won't matter once we learn the pieces of the puzzle. But I think the first episode so very much could have benefited from a brief mentoring moment with Marco Polo, because he's clearly our protagonist. He's the person we identify with. We feel his betrayal and confusion of being given to a court or whatever. It would have helped for them to, for him to say, I don't understand what's happening, and have somebody like, well, let me explain. You're now in the game now. You were just enchanting enough that you're Kublai Khan's plaything. And if you want to survive, you need to, just give us a few rules, like give us a structure to hold on to. Instead, I'm like, well, I don't get it. Like,
yeah, I feel like 100 Eyes, which I looked up, by the way.
Okay.
I did not remember it. 100 Eyes is supposed to be that. He's the martial arts instructor. And I think Yusuf, who was the tax collector, was supposed to serve that. But they didn't quite cover it well enough.
I mean, we're going into the third episode, and I still have no sense. I'm just grasping at straws, and it's like the reason each new scene happens is just always because now it's time for this set piece, and I don't know. It's difficult.
Yeah, in fact, the Yusuf story, the tax collector story, was the other story besides the Kublai Khan and his brother that I felt had some depth to it. But then at the end, I felt like, I'm a little disappointed that they just resolved, like he now, Marco, you should be careful who you make friends with, who you get attached with, is the lesson, and that's fine. But it felt like I was so excited to have a character with some reality and depth, and then you already got rid of it.
And yeah, exactly. Now it's time for the running over of a man in a blanket.
Yes.
Again, it all could change, and I apologize if somebody's sitting, because again, I have hope for it because it's 4.2 stars, which is, I think, as good or better than BoJack Horseman's rating, and so obviously it gets good at some point. I just want to get to that point.
Yeah. Well, supposedly episode 3, it gets to that point. So I'm looking forward to watching episode 3. Shall we move on to the Shield then?
Yeah, man.
Because I've been ready to take out my Rawlings glove in honor of Monica Rawlings, tough as leather captain of Farmington.
This is what's her name? Yeah,
Glenn Close.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is the episode where she's put to the wall about I'm going to seize drug owners' property to fund stuff, because not only is she going to do that, but she has a witness that she's trying to use leverage on to get him to talk. So she kicks his mom and his little sister and brother out on the street, takes the house, thinking that he'll back down and then she'll back down. Turns out they find out how to bust the killer another way, because he gets killed by the other drug dealer, who's kind of the main plot line of this season. And Vic Mackey's like, well, you don't need to take the house. And Rawlings like, yeah, I don't, do I? But you know what? I'm gonna anyway. And her reasoning is, why was it wrong? Why was it right to take a house bought by drug money yesterday and it's wrong today? And Vic's only reason is like, yeah, because yesterday we could have got leverage and today we don't. Now he's being very practical, very human. Like, so why kick some people out on the street? And she's being very principled, like, yeah, but bought with drug money. Sorry, she knew that. She shouldn't have let him do it.
Yeah, it's like she's the robotic kind of doppelganger of Vic, and that Vic has a very human element to him, which is why, even though we start the show with him doing he's damned from the beginning, but he just feels like, that he thinks he's doing the right thing, no matter how wrong the actual thing is he's doing, or oftentimes, give or take. Whereas Glenn Close is just like kind of coldly logical, like, well, no, these are the rules, so let's just play it to its logical conclusion here.
Yeah, and you can tell she's torn. She's thinking about it. She even admits that she'll let the house go if he testifies, like she'll do the trade. But in the end, her principles are.
She has a loyalty to the barn. She has
Yeah.
a loyalty to this police department, and this is a tool at her disposal, and is like, yeah, no, sucks for them. Also gonna do it.
Also, Shane is the new Vic Mackey, and Vic's trying to work to get him back under his control, and Shane doesn't want to be under his control. You've got Wagenbach and Wims still on being frozen out by the DA's office, and Wagenbach starting to compromise his principles by going in and making a side deal without telling Wims, saying like, well, look, I'll keep her under control. And the assistant DA says, you bring me some information when I want it. Now we already see like the fall of Wagenbach in the offing. Is he's going to have to be supplying information to the DA's office, and that's going to come back to bite him. You just know it is.
Yeah. Dude, great. And so you're midway through season 5 now. Is that where you are?
Third episode out of, what is it, a 13-episode season. This is supposedly the season that some people are like, oh, it's not as good in season 4. I think it's great. I was never attached to the procedural nature of things, or even Aceveda. I felt sometimes he was a little bit of a cardboard character, and I think Glenn Close's character is amazing. This isn't the most compelling storyline. I get that. The Money Train storyline is much more compelling, even though it hasn't totally gone away. But I really like the characterization, and it feels more like we're telling a Wire-like story than an NYPD Blue-like story.
Yeah. Hey, speaking of The Wire, real quick, and I guess this is more content, so it belongs here in Spoilerin time. Somebody, I forgot to mention this earlier, somebody had told me they sent me a link to David Simon's blog from a couple weeks ago talking about the whole conversion to HD, and he posted a bunch of clips showing explaining why they stuck with 4:3 for so long, to explain like what definitely changes certain scenes. And there are sometimes that they're reframing it to compensate it, to keep something feeling intimate, even though it was a wider shot in HD. And he points out some great scenes that actually work better in HD because, like when they pull Frank Sabatka's body out and everybody's standing around in the wide shot, you see how isolated and alone they are because you see them kind of huddled together in this wide open space that didn't really translate in the crane shot at the end of it in 4:3. It's really good. Just type in David Simon HD The Wire, and you'll find it'll take you to davidsimon.com where he's got some good comments on there. Makes me more excited to re-experience The Wire.
All right, well, that is it for Spoilerin time. Thanks, everybody, for hanging out and watching shows and letting us spoil you to death. You deserve it.
Yeah, well, I mean, you don't deserve to die. I would never say that to you.
The spoiling, not the die.
Yeah, well,
thank you.
I don't even want to spoil you, per se. We want you to remain fresh and
right.
excited.
We want to pamper you with spoilers.
We enjoyed talking to you about movies that we love.
We want you to wear diapers.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.